The camera opens on a tense, quiet moment, the kind that feels heavier than silence itself. Claressa Shields sits back, arms folded, eyes distant, the weight of the past few days written all over her face. For someone known as one of the toughest fighters on the planet, this moment has nothing to do with boxing. This is personal. This is emotional. And for the first time, the undefeated champion looks like she's fighting something she can't simply punch her way through. Everything changed when online personality Tasha K dropped what she described as explosive claims involving rapper Papoose and an alleged double life. Almost instantly, social media went into a frenzy. Names were trending, timelines were divided, and speculation spread faster than facts. While no concrete proof was presented, the sheer boldness of the claims was enough to spark intense conversation, and Claressa Shields found herself pulled into the storm. Claressa never asked to be part of this narrative. Yet as fans and critics dissected every detail, many began tagging her name alongside Papoose's, questioning what she knew, when she knew it, and how she felt. The pressure mounted quickly. For someone who has spent years mastering emotional control in the ring, this was a very different kind of battle. Sources close to Claressa say she was blindsided by how fast things escalated. One moment she was focused on training, legacy, and future plans, and the next she was fielding messages, calls, and headlines hinting at betrayal, secrecy, and embarrassment. Even if the allegations remain unproven, the public nature of the discussion made it impossible to ignore. On social media, Claressa initially stayed silent. No subtweets, no cryptic messages, no clapping back. That silence, however, only fueled more speculation. Some people interpreted it as strength. Others saw it as confirmation. The internet, as always, decided it knew the truth long before anyone involved had a chance to speak. Behind the scenes, the emotional toll was very real. Claressa is known for her confidence, her fire, and her unapologetic presence. But according to those around her, she struggled privately with feelings of anger, confusion, and disappointment. Not necessarily because of what was said, but because of how easily narratives can be created and weaponized online. Then came the moment that shifted everything. During a candid live session, Claressa finally addressed the situation. Not with names or accusations, but with raw emotion. Her voice cracked as she spoke about trust, loyalty, and how painful it is to see personal matters turned into public entertainment. It wasn't a full breakdown, but it was enough for fans to see that this situation had cut deeper than any punch she'd ever taken. She made it clear that much of what was circulating online was based on assumptions, rumors, and exaggerated interpretations. She reminded viewers that allegations are not facts, and that real people live with the consequences of viral speculation. Still, even as she defended herself, it was obvious that the damage had already been done. What made this moment especially difficult for Claressa was the sense of disrespect she felt, not just toward her, but toward her accomplishments. She has spent her entire life fighting for recognition in a sport that often overlooks women. To suddenly have her name trending for reasons unrelated to her success felt like a cruel twist. Tasha K, known for controversy and sensational claims, did not back down. Instead, she doubled down on her statements, framing them as insider information and what people don't want you to know. That only intensified the backlash and kept the story alive. Supporters of Claressa criticized the blogger for spreading unverified claims, while others argued that public figures should expect scrutiny. Caught in the middle was Claressa, trying to maintain dignity while the internet debated her life like a reality show. Some fans praised her restraint, calling it growth. Others wanted her to go full fighter mode and shut everything down aggressively. But Claressa chose a different path, one rooted in self-protection rather than public warfare. Privately, she leaned on a small circle of trusted people. Training became both an escape and a release. The gym once again became the place where she felt in control. But even there, the emotional weight followed her. Trainers noticed she was quieter, more focused, but also more intense, as if every punch carried frustration she couldn't put into words. This situation also reignited conversations about how women connected to famous men are often treated. Regardless of their own accomplishments, they become supporting characters in someone else's story. Claressa, a two-time Olympic gold medalist and multiple division world champion, suddenly found her identity being questioned through the lens of alleged drama that may not even be true. As part one of this unfolding story comes to a close, one thing is clear. Claressa Shields is hurting, but she is not broken. The emotional moment people witnessed wasn't weakness. It was humanity. In a world where everyone expects instant reactions and explosive responses, she chose honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. The allegations may continue to circulate. The blogs may keep talking. The comments may remain divided. But Claressa's journey has never been about public approval. It has always been about resilience. And while this chapter has tested her in ways the ring never could, it has also revealed a different kind of strength. One that doesn't rely on fists, but on endurance. This is only the beginning of the story. The fallout is still unfolding. Emotions are still raw, and questions remain unanswered. But as Claressa takes a breath, wipes her face, and lifts her chin, one thing is certain. She's still standing, and whatever comes next, she won't face it quietly. The aftermath didn't quiet down, it grew louder. By the time part 2 begins, the internet had already moved from speculation into full-blown judgment. Every clip of Claressa Shields was slowed down, replayed, and overanalyzed. A glance was labeled shade. A smile was called fake. Silence became a storyline of its own. In the court of public opinion, neutrality didn't exist. Claressa tried to stay focused, but the noise was relentless. Notifications flooded her phone daily, some offering support, others demanding answers she didn't owe anyone. What hurt the most wasn't just the rumors themselves, but the confidence with which strangers spoke about her life, her emotions, and her relationship as if they had front-row seats. It felt invasive in a way fame hadn't prepared her for. People close to her say there were moments when she questioned whether speaking at all had been a mistake. Her emotional honesty had been met with mixed reactions. Some applauded her vulnerability. Others mocked it, claiming it proved the allegations must be true. The irony wasn't lost on her. Show emotion and you're weak. Show none and you're guilty. Meanwhile, the narrative around Papoose continued to evolve without any direct clarification from him. That silence only added fuel to the fire. Bloggers dissected old interviews, past lyrics, and photos from years ago, weaving them into theories about a so-called double life. None of it was confirmed, but confirmation no longer seemed necessary. The story had taken on a life of its own. Claressa found herself wrestling with an unfamiliar feeling: loss of control. In boxing, she controls the pace, the power, the outcome. Here, she was a spectator in her own story. No matter what she did, someone else decided what it meant. That helplessness weighed on her more than she wanted to admit. There was one night, according to someone in her inner circle, when everything finally spilled over. Alone, away from cameras and social media, Claressa broke down completely. Not for the public, not for sympathy, but because carrying strength nonstop is exhausting. Years of being told she had to be tough, unshakable, fearless. This moment cracked that armor. Yet even in that breakdown there was clarity. She realized she had been fighting the wrong opponent. It wasn't Tasha K. It wasn't the bloggers. It wasn't even the rumors. It was the need to defend herself against people who had already made up their minds. And that was a fight she could never win. The next day something shifted. Claressa stopped reading comments altogether. She limited who could reach her. She returned to a routine that grounded her. Early mornings, long runs, intense training sessions. Not as a distraction, but as a reminder of who she was before the noise and who she would be long after it faded. Fans began to notice the change. Her energy felt different. Not defeated, but sharpened. Less reactive. More deliberate. When she did appear publicly, she spoke with measured confidence, refusing to be baited into addressing rumors directly. Instead, she spoke about mental health, boundaries, and the cost of constant visibility. That choice didn't satisfy everyone. Some accused her of dodging the truth. Others said she was being mature. But Claressa wasn't trying to satisfy anyone anymore. She was protecting her peace, even if it meant being misunderstood. At the same time, conversations around accountability began to surface. Critics questioned whether influencers and bloggers should be allowed to broadcast serious allegations without evidence. Supporters of Claressa argued that there should be consequences for turning speculation into content. The situation sparked broader discussions about ethics in online media and the real-world impact of viral claims. Still, none of that erased the emotional residue. Trust had been shaken not just in people but in platforms she once used freely. Claressa became more guarded, more intentional about what parts of her life she shared. The version of her that let fans see behind the curtain had changed, perhaps permanently. There were moments when anger resurfaced. Not explosive anger, but a quiet, simmering frustration. Anger that her achievements could be overshadowed so quickly. Anger that her name could trend for drama instead of dominance. Anger that being a woman in the public eye meant carrying scrutiny differently than men ever do. Yet, even that anger became fuel. In training, she pushed harder. In interviews, she spoke sharper truths. She reminded people, without shouting, that she was still Claressa Shields. Still undefeated. Still historic. Still standing on her own name, not anyone else's. Behind the scenes, conversations were happening, serious ones. Boundaries were drawn. Decisions were made about what she would and would not tolerate going forward. Claressa learned that silence isn't always weakness, and speaking isn't always strength. Sometimes survival means choosing yourself, even when the world demands a performance. As weeks passed, the story slowly lost its grip on the timeline. New scandals emerged, new names trended. That's how the internet works. But the impact lingered for Claressa. Experiences like this don't disappear just because attention shifts. They change you. In quieter moments, she reflected on how easily public figures are dehumanized. How quickly empathy disappears when clicks are involved. She wondered how many others had gone through similar storms without the support system she was fortunate to have. That awareness softened her, even as it hardened her resolve. By the end of part 2, Claressa is no longer in the middle of the storm. She's walking out of it. Not untouched but wiser. Not unhurt but unbroken. The rumors may never be fully resolved. The truth may never satisfy everyone. But Claressa has stopped waiting for closure from the outside. What remains is a woman redefining strength on her own terms. Strength that allows for tears without shame. Strength that doesn't explain itself to strangers. Strength that understands that not every battle deserves engagement. The world may remember this chapter as controversy. Claressa will remember it as a turning point. A moment when she learned that her power doesn't come from controlling the narrative, but from refusing to let it control her. And as the cameras fade and the comments quiet, one thing becomes undeniable. This wasn't the story that broke her. It was the story that forced her to grow. By the time part 3 begins, the dust has settled, but the ground is permanently changed. Claressa Shields is no longer reacting to the chaos. She's reflecting on it. The silence around her isn't empty anymore. It's intentional. And for the first time since the story exploded, she feels like she's breathing on her own terms. What lingered most wasn't the rumor itself, but the realization of how quickly loyalty can be tested when public opinion gets involved. Claressa noticed who stayed quiet out of respect, who reached out privately, and who used the moment to chase attention. That awareness was sobering. Fame doesn't just amplify support, it exposes intentions. In the weeks following the controversy, Claressa became more selective about her environment. Not just socially but mentally. She stopped explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. That shift didn't come from bitterness. It came from exhaustion. Carrying other people's projections had become too heavy, and she finally put them down. There was also a deeper, more uncomfortable truth she had to confront. No amount of achievement shields you from being reduced to gossip. Olympic gold medals, world titles, history-making wins, none of it stopped her from being spoken about like a headline instead of a human being. That realization stung, but it also stripped away illusions she didn't know she still had. Claressa began journaling again, something she hadn't done consistently in years. Page after page, she wrote about anger she didn't express, hurt she minimized, and strength she felt pressured to perform. The pages weren't pretty. They weren't inspirational. They were honest. And that honesty became a form of healing she hadn't expected. Publicly, she remained composed. Interviews focused on her career, upcoming goals, and legacy. But between the lines, there was a new firmness. She no longer softened her words to make others comfortable. She spoke clearly about boundaries, about respect, about the difference between curiosity and entitlement. Some fans noticed the change immediately. Others felt it and couldn't quite explain it. Claressa hadn't lost her fire, but it burned differently now. Less explosive, more controlled, like someone who knows exactly where to aim their energy. There were still moments when the past weeks replayed in her mind. Late at night, early mornings, the way certain comments cut deeper than she expected. The way people she'd never met felt comfortable judging her character. Healing wasn't linear and she didn't pretend it was. But she no longer let those moments define her day. Behind closed doors, conversations about the future took on a new tone. Claressa thought about how she wanted to be seen, not just as a fighter, but as a woman navigating visibility in a world that profits from scrutiny. She considered how much access she'd give moving forward, and what parts of her life would remain sacred. This wasn't about hiding, it was about choosing, and that distinction mattered. One of the most powerful shifts came when Claressa stopped viewing the situation as something that happened to her, and started seeing it as something that revealed truth. Truth about the media, truth about public appetite for drama, truth about her own resilience. She didn't come out unscathed, but she came out aware. The irony wasn't lost on her. She trained her entire life to withstand physical punishment, yet it was emotional exposure that tested her endurance the most. Still, she survived it the same way she survived everything else, by staying grounded in who she was long before the spotlight intensified. Gradually, her name began trending again for familiar reasons. Training footage, fight announcements, headlines about her accomplishments. It felt like a return to normal, but Claressa knew it wasn't. She wasn't the same person who entered the storm, and she didn't want to be. There was a new clarity in her purpose. Not just to win, but to redefine what winning looks like. To show that strength doesn't mean silence, but it also doesn't mean spectacle. That you can stand tall without shouting. That you can protect your heart without closing it. As part 3 draws to a close, Claressa Shields isn't looking backward anymore. She acknowledges what happened without letting it anchor her. She understands that the internet will always talk, but it no longer gets to decide her worth, her narrative, or her peace. This chapter didn't end with apologies or public confessions. It ended with something quieter and far more powerful. Acceptance. Acceptance that not everyone will understand her. Acceptance that truth doesn't always go viral. Acceptance that her life is bigger than any momentary storm. Claressa moves forward with scars you can't see and strength you can feel. Not hardened, honed. Not guarded, grounded. And as the noise fades into the background, one truth stands firm above the rest. She didn't just survive the controversy. She outgrew it.